She painted pixels in silence. Nobody understood her art. A federal agent walked in, studied the digital canvas, then whispered 4 words to her. Follow the blockchain trail. She stopped clicking, nodded once. 24 hours later, headlines exploded across every major network. Largest money laundering operation in history dismantled through cryptocurrency analysis. Millions in cartel funds frozen. 17 arrests. The art world stood bewildered. The agent revealed she carries the skills of a unit that operates beyond traditional law enforcement. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The small coffee shop buzzed with the familiar sounds of keyboards clicking and steam hissing from the espresso machine. Located 3 blocks from the financial district in downtown Phoenix, the establishment had become an unofficial co-working space for freelancers, students, and digital nomads. The smell of roasted beans mixed with the soft glow of laptop screens created an atmosphere where creativity could flourish unnoticed. Tucked away in the corner booth sat a woman who arrived every morning at exactly 8:15, ordered the same medium coffee with oat milk, and spent her days creating what most people dismissed as glorified computer graphics. Meet Elena Restrepo, 26 years old, dark hair streaked with purple highlights that caught the light when she leaned forward to examine her work. She wore vintage band t-shirts under oversized cardigans, thick-rimmed glasses that slipped down her nose when she concentrated, and paint-stained jeans that had seen better days. Her fingers moved across a high-end graphics tablet with the precision of a surgeon, creating intricate digital paintings that she minted as NFTs on various blockchain platforms. To the casual observer, she was just another millennial trying to make money selling digital art to crypto enthusiasts with more money than sense. The other regulars at the coffee shop had their opinions about Elena's work, and they weren't shy about sharing them. A group of finance bros who occupied the large table near the window made it their daily entertainment to comment on her career choices. They wore expensive suits, carried leather briefcases, and spoke loudly enough to ensure everyone could hear their expertise on market trends and investment strategies. Their leader, a cocky derivatives trader named Marcus with perfectly styled hair and a Rolex that caught every ray of sunlight, never missed an opportunity to demonstrate his intellectual superiority. "Look at her over there, making her little pictures on the computer," Marcus would say, stirring sugar into his triple-shot Americano. "NFTs are just a scam for people who don't understand real investing. Digital art isn't even art. It's just pixels on a screen that some crypto nerds convince themselves have value." His colleagues would nod in agreement, chuckling at their own perceived sophistication. They called her the Doodle Girl and made jokes about how she probably lived in her parents' basement, selling cartoon monkeys to teenagers with daddy's credit card. Elena never responded to their comments. She would glance up briefly, offer a polite smile if they made eye contact, and return to her work without showing any sign that their words affected her. To them, she was background noise, someone who existed on the periphery of their important world of high finance and serious business. They assumed she was naive, possibly delusional about the value of her work, and certainly not someone worth taking seriously in any meaningful conversation about economics or technology. What they didn't know was that Elena's digital paintings were far more sophisticated than they appeared. Each piece contained layers upon layers of data visualization, embedded with complex mathematical patterns that would be invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. Her color choices weren't artistic preferences, but representations of financial flows. The geometric shapes weren't abstract designs, but mapped correlations between cryptocurrency transactions across multiple blockchain networks. Every brushstroke had meaning, every gradient told a story, and every composition revealed connections that traditional analysis had missed. During quiet afternoons when the coffee shop emptied out, Elena would sit with her laptop and multiple monitors, cross-referencing her artistic discoveries with public databases, financial records, and news reports. She had developed proprietary software that could analyze blockchain transactions and identify patterns that suggested money laundering operations. Her artistic eye allowed her to see relationships in data that purely analytical minds often overlooked. She could spot anomalies in transaction flows the same way she could identify when colors didn't harmonize in a composition. The inspiration for her unique approach came from her background in both computer science and fine arts. She had double majored in college, much to her parents' confusion, and spent years trying to find a way to merge her technical skills with her creative passion. Traditional data visualization felt too sterile, too removed from the human element of the crime she was uncovering. By translating financial data into art, she could process vast amounts of information while maintaining an intuitive understanding of the patterns she was discovering. Her NFT sales were modest but consistent. She had built a small following of collectors who appreciated the aesthetic quality of her work without understanding its deeper significance. The irony wasn't lost on her that some of her pieces, which revealed the mechanics of cryptocurrency-based money laundering, were being purchased with the very cryptocurrencies that criminals use to hide their profits. She priced her work reasonably, never seeking to maximize profits, because the art itself wasn't her primary goal. Elena had been working on a particularly complex series called Urban Currents for 6 months. To anyone viewing the collection, the pieces appeared to be abstract representations of city life, with flowing lines representing traffic patterns and warm colors suggesting the pulse of metropolitan energy. The series had gained attention from art critics, who praised her innovative use of digital media to capture the essence of modern urban existence. Several galleries had expressed interest in featuring her work in upcoming exhibitions focused on contemporary digital art. What the critics didn't realize was that Urban Currents was actually a comprehensive map of money laundering operations across 3 major cities. Each painting corresponded to a different geographic region, with the flowing lines representing the movement of illicit funds through various cryptocurrency exchanges, shell companies, and legitimate businesses. The warm colors indicated high-volume transactions, while cooler tones showed smaller, more frequent transfers designed to stay below regulatory reporting thresholds. Elena had spent countless hours verifying her findings, cross-referencing wallet addresses with known criminal organizations, tracing transaction histories through multiple blockchain networks, and identifying the real-world businesses being used to legitimize dirty money. She had documentation linking specific transactions to drug trafficking operations, human trafficking networks, and arms dealing. Her artistic process had uncovered a sophisticated financial network that spanned multiple countries and involved billions of dollars in criminal proceeds. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Elena was putting the finishing touches on the centerpiece of her Urban Currents series. The painting, which she had titled Convergence, showed all the various streams of financial data flowing together into a central point, represented by a brilliant golden spiral that dominated the center of the composition. As she adjusted the final details, adding subtle variations in color and texture, she realized that the convergence point wasn't just artistic symbolism. It represented an actual physical location where multiple money laundering operations intersected. The location was a luxury real estate development in downtown Miami, where several shell companies had been purchasing high-end condominiums with cryptocurrency payments. The same development appeared in transaction records linked to 3 different criminal organizations that Elena had been tracking. The real estate purchases were being used to convert digital currencies into physical assets that could then be sold for clean money. It was an elegant solution that bypassed traditional banking oversight while creating substantial profits for everyone involved. Elena spent the next week verifying her discovery, using public records to identify the ownership structure of the development company and tracing its connections to other businesses in her database. The pattern was clear and undeniable. She had found the central hub of a massive money laundering operation, and her art had led her there through a path that traditional financial investigators had missed entirely. That morning, as Elena sat in her usual corner booth working on her documentation, a man in a dark suit entered the coffee shop. He was older, maybe mid-50s, with graying hair and the kind of observant eyes that missed nothing. Unlike the usual customers, he didn't order coffee or find a table. Instead, he walked directly toward Elena's booth with the purposeful stride of someone who had a specific mission to accomplish. The finance bros at their usual table stopped their conversation to watch the interaction. Marcus leaned back in his chair, expecting to witness some kind of confrontation that would validate their assessment of Elena as someone who attracted the wrong kind of attention. They assumed he might be a creditor, a landlord, or perhaps someone from the IRS who had finally caught up with her questionable tax reporting on cryptocurrency earnings. The man stopped at Elena's table and studied her current work in progress, which was displayed on her main monitor. His eyes moved across the digital canvas with the focus of someone who understood exactly what he was looking at. After a long moment, he leaned down slightly and spoke just loud enough for Elena to hear. "Follow the blockchain trail." The phrase hit Elena like an electric shock. It was a code she had never heard before but somehow understood instinctively. Her hands stopped moving across the tablet and she looked up at the stranger with new recognition. This wasn't a coincidence or a casual comment about her work. This was contact from someone who knew exactly what she had been doing. Someone who had been watching her progress. Someone who represented interests that went far beyond art appreciation. She saved her work carefully, closed her applications in a specific sequence, and nodded once to indicate she understood. The stranger placed a business card on the table without saying another word, and walked out of the coffee shop with the same purposeful stride he had used to enter. Elena picked up the card and read the simple text. "Agent Rivera, Financial Crimes Task Force. We need to talk." The finance bros watched the entire exchange with growing confusion. Marcus tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. But the interaction didn't fit any of their preconceptions about Elena or her work. Probably some kind of scam, he told his colleagues, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Government impersonators trying to get money from gullible artists. But even as he said it, something about the man's demeanor and Elena's reaction suggested this was far more serious than anything they had imagined. Elena packed her equipment with practiced efficiency, her movements quick but controlled. She had always known this moment might come, though she hadn't expected it to happen in such a public setting. Her work had been leading towards something significant, and apparently, she wasn't the only one who had noticed. As she walked toward the exit, she could feel the eyes of everyone in the coffee shop following her movement. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. First time since she had been coming there, she was the center of attention, though not in the way anyone had expected. The meeting was arranged for later that afternoon at a government building downtown. Elena arrived exactly on time, carrying a secure laptop bag and a portfolio of her most significant discoveries. Agent Rivera was waiting in a conference room that had been cleared of all other personnel, with multiple monitors set up to display her work and high-resolution printing capabilities for her documentation. "Ms. Restrepo," Agent Rivera began, "we've been monitoring your NFT releases for the past 8 months. Your Urban Current series has provided more actionable intelligence on money laundering operations than our traditional financial analysis team has generated in 3 years." He gestured toward the displays where several of her paintings were now showing. "What you're seeing as art, we're seeing as evidence." Elena had prepared for this conversation, but hearing her work described in those terms still felt surreal. "I always knew the patterns were there," she said carefully. "I just never expected anyone else to recognize what I was doing." She opened her portfolio and began laying out printed versions of her digital paintings, each one accompanied by detailed analysis documentation. The blockchain doesn't lie. Every transaction leaves traces, and when you visualize enough of them together, the criminal networks become obvious. Agent Rivera examined her documentation with the thoroughness of someone who understood both the technical aspects of cryptocurrency and the operational requirements of law enforcement. "Your analysis of the Miami real estate operation is particularly impressive," he said, pointing to the Convergence painting. "We've been investigating those same shell companies for 2 years, but we could never establish the connections between them. Your visualization shows the relationships in a way that makes the conspiracy undeniable." What Elena learned during that meeting changed her understanding of her own work and its significance. The Financial Crimes Task Force had been struggling to keep pace with increasingly sophisticated money laundering operations that used cryptocurrency to evade traditional banking oversight. Criminal organizations had developed complex networks of digital wallets, automated trading programs, and cryptocurrency exchanges that made it nearly impossible to trace the flow of illicit funds using conventional investigation techniques. Elena's artistic approach had solved problems that teams of financial analysts and computer programmers couldn't crack. Her ability to see patterns in large datasets, combined with her intuitive understanding of how visual elements relate to each other, allowed her to identify connections that purely analytical approaches had missed. Her work wasn't just art. It was a new form of financial intelligence that could revolutionize how law enforcement approached cryptocurrency-based crimes. "We want to offer you a consulting position," Agent Rivera explained. "Your methods could be applied to cases across the country. We're not asking you to stop being an artist. We're asking you to help us understand what your art is telling us about criminal activity." He showed her classified case files involving drug cartels, human trafficking organizations, and terrorist financing operations that all used cryptocurrency to move money across international borders. Elena spent the next several hours reviewing the case files and explaining her methodology. She demonstrated how she converted transaction data into visual elements, how she identified patterns that suggested coordination between seemingly unrelated accounts, and how she used color theory and composition principles to make complex financial relationships immediately apparent to human observers. The impact of her work became clear as Agent Rivera walked her through the operational significance of her discoveries. The Miami real estate operation alone involved over $200 million in laundered money from 6 different criminal organizations. Her identification of the convergence point had allowed federal agents to obtain search warrants for the development company's offices and arrest 17 individuals who were coordinating the money laundering activities. "Your convergence painting led us to the largest money laundering bust in Florida history," Agent Rivera told her. "The evidence we collected from that operation is now being used to build cases against criminal networks in 12 different countries." He showed her photographs from the arrests, financial records that had been seized, and intelligence reports that detailed the scope of the criminal activities she had uncovered. But Elena's contribution went beyond just identifying criminal activity. Her artistic visualizations had revealed the underlying structure of how modern money laundering operations functioned. Traditional investigations focused on individual transactions or specific criminal organizations, but Elena's work showed how all these separate elements were connected in a vast network that spanned multiple countries and criminal enterprises. "You've essentially mapped the dark side of the cryptocurrency economy," Agent Rivera explained. "Your art shows us how money flows from street-level drug sales in Detroit to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, to real estate purchases in Miami, to cryptocurrency exchanges in Hong Kong. No one has ever been able to visualize these connections so clearly before." Elena realized that her work had implications far beyond what she had originally intended. She had started creating NFTs as a way to combine her artistic interests with her technical skills, never expecting that her creative process would lead to such significant discoveries about criminal activity. Her unique approach had revealed patterns that traditional financial investigation techniques couldn't detect, and her artistic training had allowed her to present complex information in ways that investigators could immediately understand and act upon. The federal task force wanted to expand her work to cover other criminal activities that used cryptocurrency. They showed her preliminary data about ransomware operations, dark web marketplaces, and international arms trafficking networks that all relied on digital currencies to avoid detection. Elena's visualization techniques could potentially uncover criminal connections in all these areas, providing law enforcement with a powerful new tool for fighting sophisticated criminal organizations. "We're not asking you to become a federal agent," Agent Rivera clarified. "We're asking you to keep being an artist, but to apply your artistic skills to help us understand criminal activity. You would continue creating and selling your NFTs, but you would also provide analysis and consultation on cases where your unique perspective could make a difference." Elena spent the rest of the afternoon learning about the operational requirements of federal investigations and how her artistic discoveries could be translated into admissible evidence for criminal prosecutions. She learned about the legal standards for demonstrating conspiracy, the technical requirements for tracing cryptocurrency transactions, and the international cooperation necessary for investigating criminal networks that operated across multiple countries. The position offered her the opportunity to use her skills for something more meaningful than just selling digital art to collectors. Her work could help law enforcement disrupt criminal organizations, recover stolen funds, and prevent future crimes. At the same time, she could continue developing her artistic practice and building her reputation in the art world. Elena accepted the consulting position with the understanding that her primary identity would remain as an independent artist. Her NFT collections would continue to be released on schedule, her gallery exhibitions would proceed as planned, and her public persona would remain focused on her artistic work. The federal task force would provide her with access to additional data sources and analytical tools, but her methods and creative process would remain entirely under her control. When Elena returned to the coffee shop the next morning, everything appeared exactly as she had left it. She ordered her usual coffee, took her regular seat in the corner booth, and opened her laptop to continue working on her art. The finance bros were at their usual table, Marcus was wearing another expensive suit, and the general atmosphere of the establishment remained unchanged. But Elena's perspective had shifted fundamentally. As she worked on her latest digital painting, she was aware that her artistic process was now part of a larger mission to combat criminal activity. Every color choice, every compositional element, and every visual pattern she created had the potential to reveal criminal connections that could lead to arrests, prosecutions, and the disruption of criminal organizations. The finance bros continued their daily commentary about her work, unaware that their doodle girl had just become a federal consultant, whose artistic discoveries were being used to build criminal cases across multiple jurisdictions. Marcus still made jokes about NFTs being worthless speculation, not knowing that Elena's digital paintings had provided evidence for the largest money laundering bust in recent memory. Elena smiled quietly as she worked, knowing that her true contribution to the world would remain largely invisible to the casual observers around her. Her art would continue to be appreciated for its aesthetic qualities, while its deeper significance in fighting criminal activity would be known only to a select group of federal investigators and prosecutors. The irony wasn't lost on her that the same people who dismissed her work as meaningless computer graphics were often the ones who were most vulnerable to the criminal activities she was helping to uncover. The legitimate financial industry that Marcus and his colleagues represented depended on the integrity of global financial systems, which were increasingly threatened by sophisticated money laundering operations that used cryptocurrency to evade detection. Elena's work was helping to protect the very economic structures that her critics took for granted, even though they would never know or appreciate her contribution. Her art was serving a purpose far beyond personal expression or commercial success. It was becoming a weapon in the fight against organized crime and financial corruption. As she continued working on her latest series, Elena began to envision how her artistic practice could evolve to address other forms of criminal activity. She could adapt her visualization techniques to analyze patterns in human trafficking operations, identify coordination between terrorist financing networks, or reveal connections between seemingly unrelated cybercrimes. The potential applications seemed limitless, and Elena realized that she had discovered an entirely new field that combined artistic creativity with criminal investigation. Her success would be measured not just by gallery sales or critical acclaim, but by the number of criminal organizations disrupted, the amount of stolen money recovered, and the number of victims who were helped by her discoveries. Elena returned to her daily routine at the coffee shop, creating her digital paintings, while the world around her remained unaware of the significance of her work. She was an artist whose canvases revealed criminal networks, a creator whose compositions could lead to arrests, and a visionary whose aesthetic choices were helping to reshape how law enforcement approached financial crimes in the digital age. The finance bros continued their jokes and commentary, never realizing that they were witnessing the daily work of someone who was revolutionizing criminal investigation through art. Elena's quiet presence in the corner booth represented something far more significant than they could have imagined, and her unassuming demeanor concealed capabilities that extended far beyond their understanding of what art could accomplish. In a world increasingly defined by digital transactions and virtual currencies, Elena had found a way to use artistic vision to reveal hidden truths about criminal activity. Her NFTs weren't just collectible digital art. They were maps of criminal networks, evidence of financial crimes, and tools for law enforcement agencies around the world. Her story was just beginning, but already her impact was being felt in federal courtrooms, international investigations, and criminal organizations that were discovering their supposedly invisible activities had been revealed through the artistic vision of someone they would never have considered a threat. 3 months after accepting the federal consulting position, Elena's life had developed a careful rhythm of dual purposes. Her mornings still began in the familiar corner booth of the coffee shop, creating digital art that appeared purely aesthetic to casual observers. But now her afternoons were spent in secure government facilities, where her artistic discoveries were being transformed into criminal indictments and international arrest warrants. The breakthrough that changed everything came through her latest series, which she had titled Nocturnal Migrations. The collection featured dark, moody compositions with streams of silver and gold flowing across midnight blue backgrounds. Art critics praised the series for its sophisticated use of negative space and its evocative representation of nighttime urban energy. Gallery owners contacted her about exclusive representation deals, and several major collectors had already placed acquisition requests before the full series was even completed. What the art world didn't understand was that Nocturnal Migrations mapped the largest drug cartel money laundering operation in North American history. The silver streams represented cryptocurrency transactions moving through automated trading systems designed to obscure the source of funds. The gold flows showed how those same funds were being converted into legitimate investments in real estate, technology companies, and international commodity trading. Elena had been tracking these patterns for months, watching as billions of dollars moved through increasingly sophisticated financial networks that spanned from street corners in Los Angeles to banking centers in Switzerland. The cartels had evolved far beyond simple cash-based operations, developing technological capabilities that rivaled legitimate financial institutions in their complexity and effectiveness. The series had attracted attention from an unexpected source. Dr. Marcus Chen, a professor of behavioral economics at Stanford University, had written a detailed analysis of Elena's work for a prestigious academic journal. His paper, titled Aesthetic Patterns in Digital Financial Visualization, praised her intuitive understanding of economic flows and her ability to represent complex financial relationships through visual composition. Dr. Chen had requested a meeting to discuss collaborating on a research project that would use her artistic techniques to study legitimate market patterns. Elena agreed to the meeting, curious about how her methods might apply to legal financial analysis. They arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant in Palo Alto where academic conversations could unfold without interruption. When Elena arrived at the restaurant, she found Dr. Chen waiting at a secluded corner table, studying papers that he quickly shuffled into a briefcase when she approached. He was younger than she had expected, maybe early 40s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested someone accustomed to working with highly sensitive information. His academic credentials were impressive, but something about his demeanor suggested connections that extended beyond university research. Ms. Restrepo, Dr. Chen began after they had ordered their meals. Your visualization of economic patterns is remarkable, but I suspect you understand that your work reveals more than just aesthetic relationships. He pulled out a tablet and showed her a detailed analysis he had prepared of her Nocturnal Migration series. These aren't abstract representations of urban energy. These are precise maps of financial flows that correspond to known criminal organizations. Elena studied his analysis carefully, recognizing that Dr. Chen had identified connections in her work that went far beyond what she had consciously intended to reveal. His background in behavioral economics had given him tools to interpret her artistic choices in ways that revealed the underlying criminal activities she was tracking. You see the patterns too, she said quietly, understanding that this conversation was moving into territory that required extreme caution. I see more than patterns, Dr. Chen replied. I see evidence of coordination between criminal organizations that we previously thought were completely separate. Your art shows connections between Mexican cartels, Colombian trafficking networks, and Eastern European cybercrime syndicates. They're all using the same financial infrastructure, and your paintings map that infrastructure with incredible precision. What Elena learned during that dinner conversation fundamentally altered her understanding of the criminal activities she had been tracking. Dr. Chen wasn't just an academic researcher. He was a consultant for international law enforcement agencies, using economic analysis to identify criminal networks that operated across national boundaries. His expertise in behavioral patterns had made him one of the world's leading authorities on how criminal organizations adapted their financial strategies to evade detection. The cartels have essentially created their own parallel economy, Dr. Chen explained, showing her classified research that detailed the scope of criminal financial activities. They use cryptocurrency, legitimate businesses, and traditional banking systems in combination to move money more efficiently than many legal corporations. Your artistic visualizations reveal the structure of this parallel economy in ways that traditional analysis has missed. Elena realized that her work had implications that extended far beyond the cases she had been consulting on with Agent Rivera's task force. The patterns she was identifying in her art revealed a global criminal economy that operated with the sophistication of a multinational corporation, using advanced technology and coordinated strategies to generate profits that exceeded the gross domestic product of many countries. Dr. Chen's research showed that the criminal networks Elena had been tracking were connected to activities far beyond drug trafficking. The same financial infrastructure was being used to fund human trafficking operations, arms smuggling, political corruption, and terrorist activities. Her artistic discoveries were revealing the financial backbone of organized crime on a scale that law enforcement agencies were only beginning to comprehend. Your Nocturnal Migration series shows something that we've suspected but never been able to prove, Dr. Chen continued. These aren't separate criminal organizations competing with each other. They're components of a coordinated system that shares resources, technology, and financial infrastructure. Your art proves that they're operating as a unified criminal economy. The implications of this discovery were staggering. Law enforcement agencies around the world had been treating drug cartels, human traffickers, arms dealers, and cybercriminals as separate problems requiring different investigation strategies. Elena's work suggested that these apparently distinct criminal activities were actually integrated components of a single global network that shared financial systems, communication technologies, and operational strategies. Dr. Chen showed her intelligence reports from agencies in 12 different countries, all describing criminal activities that appeared to be coordinated but lacked clear connections. Elena's artistic visualizations provided the missing links that revealed how seemingly unrelated crimes in different countries were actually part of coordinated operations managed by the same criminal leadership. "We need your help to map the complete structure of this network," Dr. Chen said, his voice carrying the urgency of someone who understood the global implications of what Elena had discovered. "Your artistic approach reveals connections that traditional intelligence analysis can't detect. With your visualization techniques, we could potentially disrupt the entire criminal economy." Elena spent the next several hours learning about the international scope of the criminal activities her art had uncovered. The network that Dr. Chen described operated in over 40 countries, with annual revenues estimated at more than $500 billion. It employed advanced encryption technologies, sophisticated money laundering techniques, and corruption networks that reached into the highest levels of government and business in multiple nations. The meeting concluded with Dr. Chen offering Elena an opportunity to expand her consulting work to include international law enforcement agencies. Her artistic techniques could be applied to criminal investigations on every continent, helping to identify connections between criminal organizations that had previously appeared to be operating independently. Elena accepted the expanded role, understanding that her artistic practice had evolved into something far more significant than personal creative expression. Her digital paintings were becoming tools for understanding and disrupting global criminal networks, and her unique perspective was providing insights that traditional investigation methods couldn't achieve. When Elena returned to her regular routine at the coffee shop, she carried with her the knowledge that her work was now part of a global effort to combat organized crime. Her latest painting in progress, which appeared to be an abstract representation of ocean currents, was actually mapping the financial flows of a human trafficking network that operated shipping routes between Southeast Asia and North America. Marcus and his colleagues continued their daily commentary about her work, completely unaware that their doodle girl was now consulting for international law enforcement agencies on criminal investigations that spanned multiple continents. Their jokes about NFTs being worthless had taken on an almost surreal quality, given that Elena's digital art was providing evidence for criminal prosecutions in courtrooms around the world. The expanded scope of Elena's work required new levels of security and operational awareness. Agent Rivera arranged for her to receive training in counter-surveillance techniques, secure communications protocols, and threat assessment procedures. The criminal organizations her work was helping to investigate had enormous financial resources and sophisticated intelligence capabilities of their own. Elena learned that several artists and researchers who had worked on financial crime investigations had received threats or experienced suspicious incidents that suggested they were being monitored by criminal organizations. Her high-profile NFT sales and gallery exhibitions made her a public figure, which created security challenges that didn't exist for traditional law enforcement investigators who could maintain anonymity. The solution was to increase the sophistication of her cover identity, while implementing security measures that would protect her without interfering with her artistic practice. Elena began varying her daily routines, using secure communication technologies, and working with security consultants who specialized in protecting civilians who assisted law enforcement investigations. Meanwhile, her artistic reputation continued to grow. Nocturnal Migrations had sold out completely within hours of being released, with individual pieces commanding prices that established Elena as one of the most successful NFT artists in the market. Art critics were calling her work revolutionary, praising her ability to use digital media to capture complex social and economic themes that traditional art forms couldn't address. Elena's success in the art world provided perfect cover for her expanding role in criminal investigations. Gallery openings and art fairs gave her opportunities to travel internationally for meetings with law enforcement agencies in different countries. Her status as a successful artist explained her financial resources, her extensive travel schedule, and her access to high-end technology and security services. The dual nature of Elena's life created unique challenges and opportunities. Her artistic practice was genuinely creative and personally fulfilling, while her law enforcement consulting provided her work with significance and impact that extended far beyond the art world. She had found a way to use her creative abilities to address some of the most serious criminal activities, threatening global security and economic stability. Elena's next major discovery came through a commission from a prestigious art collector in Hong Kong. The collector, a wealthy businessman named David Liu, had requested a custom piece that would represent the flow of international commerce through Asian financial centers. He offered a substantial fee for an exclusive work that would be displayed in his private collection and never publicly exhibited. Elena accepted the commission and began researching legitimate trade flows between Asian countries to inform her artistic composition. But as she analyzed the financial data Mr. Liu had provided to guide her work, she began to notice patterns that suggested connections to criminal activities she had been tracking in other investigations. The data Mr. Liu had provided contained transaction records that matched patterns Elena had identified in several different criminal networks. The legitimate business activities he wanted her to represent were apparently being used as cover for money laundering operations that connected to the same global criminal economy she had been mapping through her other work. Elena realized that Mr. Liu's commission wasn't just a business transaction. It was potentially an attempt by criminal organizations to use her artistic analysis to understand their own operations better. The criminal networks had apparently identified her as someone with unique capabilities for analyzing financial patterns, and they wanted to use her skills for their own purposes. The discovery presented Elena with a complex situation that required careful coordination with her law enforcement contacts. The commission provided an opportunity to gather intelligence on criminal activities in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia, but accepting it would also put her in direct contact with criminal organizations that might pose serious security threats. Agent Rivera and Dr. Chen worked with Elena to develop a strategy that would allow her to complete the commission while gathering intelligence that could be used for criminal investigations. Elena would create the artwork Mr. Liu had requested, but she would also document all the financial data he provided and use it to map criminal networks operating in Asian markets. The strategy required Elena to maintain the appearance of a normal business relationship with Mr. Liu, while secretly analyzing his data for evidence of criminal activity. She would need to deliver artwork that met his expectations while avoiding revealing that she understood the criminal implications of the financial patterns she was visualizing. Elena traveled to Hong Kong to meet with Mr. Liu and discuss the commission in person. The meeting was arranged at his corporate offices in a prestigious business district, where Elena was received with the courtesy appropriate for a successful international artist. Mr. Liu was charming and sophisticated, discussing her work with apparent knowledge and appreciation for her artistic techniques. But Elena's training in threat assessment allowed her to recognize subtle signs that Mr. Liu's interest in her work extended beyond aesthetic appreciation. His questions about her analytical methods and her ability to identify patterns in financial data suggested that he understood the investigative potential of her artistic techniques. His office contained technology and security measures that seemed excessive for legitimate business activities. During their conversation, Mr. Liu showed Elena financial records that he claimed represented normal international trade operations between his companies and business partners in multiple countries. Elena recognized immediately that the transaction patterns matched profiles she had developed for money laundering operations, but she maintained her role as an artist interested only in creating visually compelling representations of the data. "Your ability to see patterns in complex financial information is remarkable," Mr. Liu commented, watching Elena's reaction as she studied his records. "I'm curious about how you decide which relationships to emphasize in your compositions." His question seemed casual, but Elena understood that he was probing to determine whether she recognized the criminal implications of the data he was showing her. Elena carefully maintained her cover, discussing her artistic choices in terms of color theory, compositional balance, and aesthetic impact, while avoiding any indication that she understood the criminal significance of the financial patterns. She explained her process as intuitive and creative rather than analytical, emphasizing her background as an artist rather than her capabilities as a financial investigator. The commission proceeded as planned, with Elena creating a sophisticated digital painting that visualized the financial flows Mr. Liu had provided, while documenting everything for her law enforcement contacts. The artwork she delivered was aesthetically impressive and technically sophisticated, representing international commerce through dynamic compositions that captured the energy and complexity of global trade. But Elena's real accomplishment was the intelligence she gathered during the commission process. Mr. Liu's financial records provided evidence of money laundering operations that connected Asian criminal organizations to the same global network she had been investigating through her other work. The data revealed new components of the criminal economy that law enforcement agencies hadn't previously identified. Elena's work with Mr. Liu confirmed Dr. Chen's theory that apparently separate criminal organizations were actually components of a coordinated global system. The Asian operations that Mr. Liu was connected to used the same financial technologies, communication protocols, and operational strategies that Elena had identified in criminal networks operating in other parts of the world. The intelligence Elena gathered during the Hong Kong Commission led to coordinated law enforcement operations in 7 countries. The financial connections she documented provided evidence for criminal prosecutions that resulted in the arrest of over 50 individuals and the seizure of assets worth more than $2 billion. Elena's artistic career continued to flourish even as her law enforcement consulting expanded to cover criminal investigations on every continent. Her NFT collections consistently sold out immediately upon release, and her gallery exhibitions drew international attention from collectors and critics, who appreciated her innovative use of digital media to address complex contemporary themes. The success of her artistic practice provided perfect cover for her expanding role in global criminal investigations. Elena had become one of the world's leading experts on using visualization techniques to identify criminal networks, and her consulting work was helping law enforcement agencies understand and disrupt criminal activities that threatened economic and political stability in countries around the world. Elena's transformation from struggling digital artist to international consultant had happened gradually enough that the people who had known her in her earlier life didn't fully comprehend the significance of her new role. The finance bros at the coffee shop continued to see her as someone who made computer graphics for the NFT market, without understanding that her work was providing evidence for criminal prosecutions in courtrooms around the world. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on Elena as she sat in her familiar corner booth, creating art that appeared purely aesthetic to casual observers, while mapping criminal networks that threatened the global financial system. Her quiet presence in the coffee shop concealed capabilities that extended far beyond what anyone around her could have imagined. Elena had discovered that art could be a powerful tool for understanding and combating criminal activity, and her unique approach was revolutionizing how law enforcement agencies approached financial crimes in the digital age. Her NFTs weren't just collectible digital art. They were weapons in the fight against organized crime, and her unassuming demeanor masked her role as one of the world's most effective criminal investigators. The global criminal economy that Elena's work had revealed operated with revenues that exceeded the gross domestic product of most countries, using technology and coordination that rivaled the capabilities of legitimate multinational corporations. Her artistic visualizations were providing law enforcement agencies with the tools they needed to understand and disrupt this criminal system, potentially saving countless lives and protecting the integrity of global financial markets. Elena's story represented something new in the intersection of art, technology, and law enforcement. She had found a way to use creative vision to reveal hidden truths about criminal activity, and her success was inspiring other artists and researchers to explore how aesthetic approaches could contribute to solving complex social and economic problems. As Elena continued her work, she knew that her dual life as artist and investigator would continue to evolve in response to the changing nature of global criminal activities. Her artistic practice provided her with the flexibility and creativity needed to adapt her methods to new forms of criminal activity, while her law enforcement consulting gave her work significance and impact that extended far beyond the art world. The notification appeared on Elena's secure communication device at 3:17 in the morning, pulling her from restless sleep with its urgent vibration pattern. Agent Rivera's message was brief but carried the weight of months of coordinated investigation. Operation Convergence authorized. Your golden spiral analysis approved for simultaneous raids. 73 countries. Stand by for extraction protocols. Elena sat up in her apartment, understanding immediately that everything she had been working toward was about to culminate in the largest coordinated law enforcement operation in history. Her artistic discoveries had provided the intelligence necessary to map the complete structure of the global criminal network, and now authorities worldwide were prepared to act on that intelligence simultaneously to prevent the criminals from shifting their operations to avoid arrest. The extraction protocols meant that Elena's cover as an independent artist was about to be permanently compromised. Once the raids began and her role in providing intelligence became public knowledge, she would no longer be able to operate as a civilian consultant. The criminal organizations that survived the initial operations would identify her as a primary threat, making her continued presence in public settings too dangerous to maintain. Elena packed her essential belongings according to the procedures she had rehearsed but hoped never to use. Her art supplies, computer equipment, and most precious personal items fit into 2 carefully organized bags that could be transported quickly. Everything else in her apartment would be abandoned, including the comfortable life she had built around her dual identity as artist and investigator. Her final morning at the coffee shop felt surreal, knowing that she was experiencing the end of a chapter in her life while surrounded by people who had no understanding of what was about to unfold. Marcus and his colleagues occupied their usual table, discussing market trends and investment strategies with their typical confidence. The baristas prepared drinks with their familiar efficiency, and the general atmosphere of the establishment remained exactly as it had been every morning for the past year. Elena opened her laptop and accessed her secure workspace one final time from this location. Her latest painting, which she had titled Cascade Protocol, displayed the culmination of everything she had learned about the global criminal network. The composition showed interconnected streams of color flowing through geometric patterns that represented the complete financial infrastructure used by criminal organizations on every continent. Art critics who had seen preview images of Cascade Protocol were calling it Elena's masterpiece, praising her sophisticated use of mathematical relationships to create compositions that seemed to capture the essential patterns underlying all economic activity. Gallery owners had already begun bidding wars for exclusive rights to exhibit the piece, and several major collectors had offered unprecedented sums for acquisition rights. What they didn't understand was that Cascade Protocol was actually a comprehensive map of criminal financial operations that would serve as evidence in criminal prosecutions across 73 countries. Every color gradient represented specific money laundering techniques, every geometric shape corresponded to particular criminal organizations, and every compositional relationship revealed connections between criminal activities that law enforcement agencies had been investigating for years. Elena's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Chen. Academic review complete. Publication approved for immediate release. The message meant that his research paper analyzing Elena's work had been cleared for publication by international law enforcement agencies. Once published, the paper would provide the academic framework that transformed Elena's artistic discoveries into admissible evidence for criminal prosecutions around the world. The coordinated raids began at exactly noon Greenwich Mean Time, with law enforcement agencies in 73 countries executing search warrants and arrest orders simultaneously to prevent criminal organizations from warning each other about the operations. Elena watched news coverage from a secure location, seeing reports of arrests and asset seizures that represented the culmination of her work as an investigative artist. The scope of the operation was unprecedented in law enforcement history. Over 2,000 individuals were arrested during the first wave of raids, including leaders of major criminal organizations who had operated with impunity for decades. Financial assets worth more than $50 billion were frozen, and evidence seized during the raids revealed criminal activities that extended into areas law enforcement agencies had never connected to organized crime. Elena's artistic visualizations had provided the intelligence necessary to identify not just the financial infrastructure of the global criminal network, but also the communication systems, operational procedures, and leadership structures that held the organization together. Her work had revealed that what appeared to be separate criminal enterprises were actually components of a coordinated system that operated with the efficiency and sophistication of a multinational corporation. News reports began identifying Elena as a key contributor to the investigation, though the full extent of her role remained classified. Media outlets described her as an artist analyst who had used innovative visualization techniques to identify criminal networks, but the specific details of her methods and discoveries were protected by ongoing legal proceedings. The revelation that an NFT artist had played a crucial role in the largest criminal investigation in history created a media sensation that extended far beyond law enforcement and art world coverage. Elena's story became a symbol of how technology, creativity, and dedication could be combined to address problems that traditional approaches had failed to solve. Elena's transition from covert consultant to public figure required extensive security, arrangements, and lifestyle adjustments that she had prepared for but hoped to avoid. Her apartment was no longer safe, her daily routines had to be completely restructured, and her interactions with the public required constant security oversight to protect her from criminal organizations that had survived the initial raids. The coffee shop where Elena had developed her artistic practice and maintained her cover identity became a pilgrimage site for art students, technology enthusiasts, and true crime followers who wanted to see where she had created the work that led to the dismantling of the global criminal network. The corner booth where she had spent countless hours creating her digital paintings was marked with a small plaque recognizing her contribution to international law enforcement. Marcus and his colleagues found themselves inadvertently famous as the finance professionals who had dismissed Elena's work as worthless computer graphics while she was using her art to map criminal activities that threatened the global financial system they claimed to understand. Their recorded comments about NFTs being scams became viral content that highlighted the gap between conventional thinking and innovative approaches to solving complex problems. The art world struggled to process the revelation that one of its rising stars had been using her creative practice to conduct criminal investigations. Gallery owners who had dismissed Elena's work as trendy digital art suddenly realized they had been exhibiting evidence that would be used in criminal prosecutions around the world. Collectors who had purchased her NFTs discovered they owned pieces that had provided intelligence for the largest law enforcement operation in history. Elena's artistic techniques began to be studied in academic programs that combined art, technology, and criminal justice. Universities developed new curricula that explored how creative approaches could contribute to solving social problems, and researchers in multiple disciplines began investigating how aesthetic methods could enhance traditional analytical techniques. The long-term impact of Elena's work extended far beyond the immediate criminal prosecutions that resulted from Operation Convergence. Her demonstration that artistic visualization could reveal patterns invisible to traditional analysis inspired new approaches to understanding complex systems in fields ranging from environmental science to public health to economic policy. Elena's legacy transformed the relationship between art and social responsibility, showing that creative practice could contribute directly to addressing the most serious challenges facing global society. Her success inspired other artists to explore how their creative abilities could be applied to social problems, leading to new forms of artistic practice that combined aesthetic expression with analytical investigation. The criminal organizations that survived Operation Convergence were forced to completely restructure their operations, abandoning the financial technologies and communication systems that Elena's work had revealed. The disruption of their coordinated network fragmented the global criminal economy, making it far more difficult for criminal organizations to operate across international boundaries and coordinate their activities. Elena's consulting work continued with international law enforcement agencies, but her role evolved from covert investigator to public advocate for using innovative approaches to combat criminal activity. She spoke at conferences about the intersection of technology and creativity, taught workshops on visualization techniques for financial analysis, and collaborated with researchers who were developing new methods for understanding complex criminal networks. Her artistic practice also evolved to address new challenges and opportunities created by her public role. Elena began creating works that explored the relationship between technology and society, the ethics of surveillance and privacy, and the responsibility of individuals to contribute to collective security. Her new collections attracted attention from museums and collectors who recognized that her work represented a unique moment in the history of art and law enforcement. The coffee shop continued to operate as a normal business establishment, though it had gained international recognition as the location where some of the most significant criminal intelligence in history had been developed through artistic practice. The establishment embraced its unexpected fame, displaying reproductions of Elena's artwork and hosting events for students and researchers interested in learning about her innovative methods. Elena's story became part of the curriculum in schools around the world. teaching students about the importance of creative thinking, the value of persistence in the face of criticism, and the potential for individual contribution to addressing global challenges. Her example inspired young people to consider how their unique talents and perspectives could be applied to solving problems that seemed beyond the capabilities of traditional approaches. The global impact of Elena's work continued to unfold as law enforcement agencies refined and expanded the techniques she had pioneered. Her artistic approach to financial analysis became a standard tool for investigating criminal networks, and training programs were established to teach investigators how to use visualization methods to identify patterns in complex datasets. Elena had transformed from an underestimated NFT artist working in a coffee shop to an internationally recognized expert whose innovative methods had revolutionized criminal investigation. Her journey demonstrated that the most significant contributions to society often come from unexpected sources, and that creative approaches can provide solutions to problems that traditional methods cannot solve. Years after Operation Convergence, Elena continued to create art that combined aesthetic expression with analytical investigation, but her work had evolved to address new challenges in an increasingly connected world. Her example had inspired a new generation of artist investigators who used creative methods to understand and address complex social problems. The corner booth in the coffee shop remained a symbol of the potential for individual creativity to impact global events. Elena's transformation from dismissed artist to international consultant proved that innovative thinking and persistent dedication could overcome any amount of initial skepticism and contribute to positive change on a scale that seemed impossible when she first began creating her digital paintings. Elena's legacy lived on through the countless lives that had been saved by disrupting the criminal networks she had mapped, the financial systems that had been protected from criminal exploitation, and the new approaches to problem-solving that her example had inspired. Her story continued to demonstrate that true impact comes not from seeking recognition or acclaim, but from using one's unique abilities to serve purposes greater than personal success. The world had been changed by an artist who painted pixels in silence, whose work revealed truths that others had missed, and whose dedication to using creativity for justice had dismantled the largest criminal network in history. Elena's transformation from overlooked NFT creator to global investigator proved that the most powerful weapons against injustice are often found in the most unexpected places, wielded by those who others choose not to notice until their quiet courage changes everything. 5 years after Operation Convergence transformed Elena from anonymous coffee shop artist to internationally recognized investigator, she stood before the United Nations General Assembly addressing delegates from around the world about the evolving relationship between technology, creativity, and global security. Her presentation, titled Patterns of Truth: How Artistic Vision Reveals Hidden Networks, represented the culmination of her journey from dismissed NFT creator to one of the world's leading experts on using innovative visualization techniques to combat organized crime. The audience included heads of state, law enforcement leaders, technology executives, and representatives from major art institutions, all gathered to hear Elena explain how her unique approach had fundamentally changed international cooperation in fighting criminal networks. Her methods were now being taught in police academies, intelligence training programs, and art schools on every continent, creating a new generation of analyst artists who combined creative intuition with investigative rigor. Elena's latest work, a comprehensive digital installation titled Global Transparency, occupied an entire wall of the UN building's main conference room. The massive display showed real-time visualizations of legitimate financial flows, allowing observers to understand the normal patterns of international commerce and thereby recognize when criminal activities disrupted those patterns. The installation had become a symbol of how transparency and artistic vision could work together to protect global economic stability. During her presentation, Elena reflected on the unexpected path that had led from her corner booth in a Phoenix coffee shop to this international stage. She spoke about the importance of maintaining curiosity even when others dismiss your work, about the value of persistence in developing innovative approaches to complex problems, and about the responsibility that comes with discovering capabilities that can impact lives around the world. The delegates listened intently as Elena explained how her artistic practice had evolved to address new forms of criminal activity that emerged as technology continued to advance. Criminal organizations had adapted their methods in response to the disruption of their networks, developing new technologies and strategies that required equally innovative investigative approaches. Elena's work now focused on identifying patterns in artificial intelligence systems, quantum computing applications, and virtual reality environments that criminals were beginning to exploit. Elena's influence extended far beyond law enforcement applications. Her visualization techniques were being used by environmental scientists to track illegal pollution networks, by public health researchers to identify the spread of misinformation, and by economists to understand the flow of resources in developing countries. Her demonstration that creative approaches could reveal hidden patterns had inspired interdisciplinary collaboration between fields that had previously operated independently. The personal cost of Elena's transformation had been significant but ultimately worthwhile. She could never return to the anonymous life she had lived in the coffee shop, could never again work in public spaces without security oversight, and could never create art without considering its potential impact on ongoing investigations. But she had gained the satisfaction of knowing that her work had contributed to dismantling criminal networks that had caused immeasurable harm to millions of people around the world. Elena's story had become required reading in schools and universities, teaching students about the importance of creative thinking, the value of interdisciplinary approaches to problem solving, and the potential for individual contribution to addressing global challenges. Her example inspired young people to consider how their unique talents and perspectives could be applied to serving purposes greater than personal success. The coffee shop in Phoenix had become a museum and educational center, preserving the corner booth where Elena had created her revolutionary artwork, while providing interactive exhibits that taught visitors about the intersection of art, technology, and social responsibility. Students and researchers from around the world made pilgrimages to the location to understand how transformative discoveries could emerge from the most ordinary circumstances. Marcus and his colleagues had become inadvertent symbols of how conventional thinking could blind people to innovative solutions developing right in front of them. Their dismissive comments about Elena's work were now used in business schools and management training programs as examples of the importance of recognizing potential in unexpected forms and the dangers of judging value based on superficial understanding. Elena's artistic legacy continued to evolve as her techniques were refined and expanded by other artists and researchers. The field she had pioneered, which academics now called investigative aesthetics, had become a recognized discipline with its own journals, conferences, and professional organizations. Museums and galleries around the world featured exhibitions exploring how artistic vision could contribute to understanding complex social and political issues. The global criminal networks that Elena's work had helped dismantle never fully recovered from Operation Convergence. The disruption of their coordinated systems had fragmented their operations, making it far more difficult for criminal organizations to coordinate activities across international boundaries. Law enforcement agencies reported significant reductions in drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, and other criminal activities that had previously seemed impossible to control. Elena's continuing work focused on staying ahead of criminal organizations as they adapted to new technologies and developed new strategies for evading detection. Her latest research explored how artificial intelligence could be used both by criminals to hide their activities and by investigators to identify patterns that human analysis might miss. She collaborated with technology companies to develop tools that could automatically flag suspicious patterns in financial data while maintaining privacy protections for legitimate users. As Elena concluded her presentation to the United Nations, she emphasized that her success had depended not just on individual talent and dedication, but on the support and collaboration of countless other people who had recognized the value of innovative approaches to solving complex problems. She thanked the law enforcement officers who had trusted her unconventional methods, the academic researchers who had helped translate her artistic discoveries into actionable intelligence, and the technology developers who had created tools that made her work possible. The standing ovation that followed Elena's presentation reflected the international recognition of her contribution to global security and the appreciation for her demonstration that creative approaches could address problems that traditional methods had failed to solve. Her journey from dismissed coffee shop artist to internationally respected investigator had proven that the most significant contributions to society often come from unexpected sources, and that persistence in pursuing innovative solutions can overcome any amount of initial skepticism. Elena's transformation represented something larger than individual success. It symbolized the potential for creativity, technology, and dedication to combine in ways that could address the most serious challenges facing global society. Her story continued to inspire people around the world to consider how their unique abilities could contribute to positive change, proving that anyone willing to look beyond conventional approaches and persist in developing innovative solutions could make a difference that extends far beyond what initially seems possible. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.